Well, hello there. Welcome again to Thought for the Week. We've been looking at the church in Philippi and what an extraordinary place it was and what extraordinary people they were. They were such real people. I mean, you had a businesswoman, you had a girl who'd been demonized, and you had a Roman soldier and his family. These were the founder members of the church in Philippi, but it went on to become a great jewel in Paul's crown, if you want to put it that way. But wonderful people that became wonderful through the grace of the Lord. Now, the grace of the Lord is something tremendous, particularly when we see it expressed in the lives of God's people here in the Bible. And in his letter to the Philippians, Paul refers to God's grace. In chapter 1, he says, "It is right for me to feel the way I do about all of you." This is verse 7. "Since I have you in my heart. For whether I'm in chains or defending and confirming the gospel, all of you share in God's grace with me." Now that's an interesting thing, because you wouldn't associate God's grace with being in prison, but Paul does. You see, he is content in any and every situation because he knows that God is God. Jesus Christ is Lord, and he's always with him. He will never leave Paul. He will never forsake Paul. However dire the circumstances, God is always there, and his grace is sufficient for us. Now, I think that's a most wonderful thing, especially for us to remember right now, because, well, let's be honest, life's difficult for us at the moment. I know the lockdown isn't quite as bad as it was, but we don't know what's going to happen. It might all come back again, and we're on edge the whole time, wondering, am I going to be able to do this, which I planned? Or is Boris going to clamp down and stop me going here, stop me doing that, or whatever? Life is very uncertain. But in these uncertain times, one thing is sure and certain, and that is the grace of God let loose in our lives, so that whatever happens, he is there and he is sovereign. And what Paul says is this: whether I'm in chains or defending and confirming the gospel, all of you share in God's grace with me. There's nothing more wonderful than sharing the gospel with people. And Paul speaks of it when he says, defending and confirming the gospel. His defense of the gospel is when he was preaching it, when he was speaking to people about Jesus Christ and him crucified. That was such an expression of God's grace. But not only was it his preaching, it was the impact of his preaching. He says, defending and confirming the gospel. That was with the signs that followed. And the principal sign was when a person was born again. Hallelujah. What a glorious expression of the grace of God. When you became a Christian, it was God's grace at work. When I became a Christian, it was God's grace at work. How wonderful to think that through our testimony, we can bring the grace of the Lord into people's lives. When I let that thought motivate you this week, it'll be a blessing to you and to others, I can promise you. Well, goodbye for now. See you next time.